State Auditor of Mississippi, Shad White. Shad White was appointed the 42nd State Auditor of Mississippi in July 2018 and won the election to a full 4-year term in 2019. He has established a tough, no-nonsense reputation during his first year on the job. Prior to becoming state auditor, Shad served as special prosecutor, won ethics cases against politicians who broke the law, and earned a certificate in forensic accounting from the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. He also serves in the military as an officer in the Mississippi National Guard attached to the 186th Air Wing in Meridian. The auditor's office has made multiple notable arrests since Shad became state auditor. The amount of stolen or misspent public money demanded back for the taxpayers increased by millions under Shad's leadership. The auditor's office has pursued aggressive consequences for embezzlers, regardless of whether they were Republicans or Democrats. Please help me welcome the State Auditor, Shad White.
Morning. Where's Andy? Where's Andy? I didn't know I was going to have to follow pictures of weed, Andy. Come on now. If I had known that, I would have brought a picture of Brett Favre or something like that. That would have been interesting. A groan from the crowd. I appreciate that. I want to, first of all, thank you all for letting me serve you as your state auditor. So a couple of different data points about how hard the men and women of the state auditor's office are working for you right now. This past year, we have issued the largest demands in the history of the state auditor's office. We have closed out a case that led to the largest civil settlement resulting from a state auditor's investigation in the history of the auditor's office. And then this past year, we identified 4 times more misspending or embezzlement than we did in the year prior. That should show you how hard the 135 men and women of the auditor's office are working for you every day. So I want to lead off with a story real quick about what they're doing, and I think this story is emblematic of the kind of cases that we have. So not long ago, I was on the coast speaking to a Rotary Club, and as I finished up my talk, I got done, I walked out, and a woman who was in the crowd came up to me and she said, "Shad, look, to be honest with you, until I heard you speak, I didn't know that there was an office in Mississippi that worked to stop public corruption. But now that you've said that, I'd like to give you some information." And I said, "Okay." She said, "Can I run to my car?" I said, "Yes, ma'am, go ahead." So she runs to her car, she comes back, she brings back this envelope full of documents, hands it to me, I open it up right there and I start looking, and I look down and I can tell very quickly, this ain't good. Whatever she's got is serious. So I took that packet of documents back to my office, took it back to the investigators. We started working on it, and that packet of documents ultimately led to the arrest and conviction of Mayor Mario King, mayor of Moss Point, Mississippi. As it turns out, what he was doing was he had held a gala, a fundraising gala on the coast, and he was telling folks that he was raising money at this gala to pay for mental health services for public school students. And once that money was raised and once it went into a bank account, Mayor King and his wife spent that money on a car for themselves. They bought a dog for themselves, which, as you know, is not mental health for public school students. They spent it on a variety of different personal things. And of course, we investigated it, we identified it. We started working with our federal partners at the FBI. We started working with federal prosecutors. Ultimately, we got a guilty sentence at the end of it. And Mayor King was sentenced to 30 months in prison. He's no longer mayor of Moss Point. If I had not been at that Rotary Club that day, if I had not seen that woman, if she had not heard about the work that we were doing, then that case would not have come to us and we would not have been able to put a stop to that. So why do I tell you about that case? Why do I tell you about that case? I tell you for a couple different reasons. Number one, that case is emblematic of a thing that I'm seeing and I have seen over the past 3 years as state auditor. That thing is that a lot of programs that are intended to benefit the poor, the least of these, folks in Mississippi who need help, those programs are being stolen from, which one, bothers you, but two, it's motivating for us at the state auditor's office to go to work every day and try to put a stop to that kind of stuff. Two, and this is really more important, I think, I hear a lot of times people will say, well, that program over there is benefiting poor folks. It's really important. We just need to let it keep operating. Somebody said that once about Medicaid. This is a really good, important program. We just need to let it keep operating. My message to you today is I disagree with that. My message is if a program is important, then oversight of that program is even more important. If a program is benefiting the least of these, the poor in Mississippi, then oversight of that program is even more important. So let's talk about another program that's really important. It's important to everybody in here. Workforce training. Everybody in here, I bet if we took a poll, 100% of folks from that end of the room to that end of the room, including Bob over there, probably would agree that workforce training in Mississippi is important, that we need to be funding the building of skills among workers in Mississippi so that our economy can improve. But if a program is important, then oversight of the program is equally important. So y'all may have read a couple of weeks ago, we had an investigation into workforce training spending up in North Mississippi. And I won't belabor you with the details. I won't tell you about that case again because you can read about it. But one of the things that we realized as we saw that case and investigated it was that it was very, very easy for some employers to manufacture false timesheets for workforce training classes that were being taught in their businesses and to draw down workforce training dollars as a result, illegally. So what I have said in the wake of that case is that we need to do a better job as a state, and I say we meaning the auditor's office, policymakers, the legislative branch, the executive branch. We need to do a better job in Mississippi of making sure that those dollars actually go to train real workers and improve their skills and are not stolen or not subject to fraud. One thing that I'm going to recommend is we have a new agency in Mississippi. It's called Accelerate Mississippi. It's supposed to make sure that workforce training dollars are spent in the way that the law requires and also make sure they're spent effectively. I think that that agency needs to be funded and needs to have between 2 to 3 internal auditors that they can deploy out into the world to make sure that workforce training dollars are being spent legally. I don't need the internal auditors. They don't have to come to my office. I don't need more funding for them. But I do think that Accelerate needs those internal auditors. Internal auditors have ended up saving some states money. Tennessee makes great use of internal auditors. If those internal auditors find criminality, if they find that somebody's stolen money, I think they should be required to report that to my office and required to report that to the Attorney General's office. That's the kind of work, that's the kind of hard thinking that we're doing in the auditor's office every day. We're closing out these cases, we're investigating people, we're getting convictions. We've gotten hundreds of years of prison time for felons who have stolen your money. But we also want to take the additional extra step and think hard about the policies that can stop misspending in the first place. So a couple of final things. One thing I've realized is that if the overriding message of state government for a long time had been, well, good programs are really important, let's just let them keep running, I have now realized that that old way of doing things ain't gonna work anymore. If we want to maximize the use of our dollars, the old way of doing things ain't gonna work anymore. We're gonna have to think fresh and anew about how we're approaching these problems. And two, we collectively as a state have to say that if there is misspending, if there is fraud, it doesn't matter who does it, it doesn't matter how powerful you are, it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter what party you're in, we have a duty to make sure that the taxpayers have their money spent in the way that the law requires. And for my part, that's what I'm dedicated to doing every single day as your state auditor, and I'll stay in this job as long as you will have me in it because I think it's fulfilling and it's a mission that I care about. We've got so many folks at the auditor's office who could go off tomorrow, lawyers, CPAs, career white-collar investigators who could leave tomorrow and make a lot more money than they're making in the auditor's office, but they choose to stay because they care about the mission. They choose to stay because at the end of every week they can go home and put their head down on the pillow and they can say, I put a stop to this. I helped this program. I helped make sure that these kids who should have benefited from this money actually got access to the money. I helped make sure that that person who was defrauding taxpayers went to jail and is never going to do that again. And that's what motivates us every single day in the auditor's office. Thank you so much. It's good to see you today.